Most people remember Mike Tyson as an unstoppable force, a boxer who tore through the heavyweight division with terrifying speed and raw power. Known worldwide as Iron Mike, he became the youngest heavyweight champion in history at just 20 years old when he defeated Trevor Berbick in 1986. To fans, he seemed almost superhuman, an embodiment of destruction wrapped in discipline. But beneath the highlight reels and championship belts was a far more fragile truth. Tyson's dominance did not begin with confidence or glory. It was rooted in fear, instability, and deep emotional wounds formed long before he ever stepped into a professional ring. The tragedy of his life is not simply about scandal or downfall, it is about a boy who was never taught how to feel safe, who built his empire on survival instincts, and who carried unhealed trauma into every victory the world applauded. A childhood forged in fear. Long before fame found him, Tyson was a frightened child growing up in Brownsville, a tough neighborhood in New York City. Poverty and violence were constants. He was small, sensitive, and frequently bullied. By his own accounts, he was robbed, beaten, and mocked. The streets taught him early that weakness invited pain. Survival demanded aggression. Fighting became less about pride and more about protection. He wasn't dreaming of championship belts. He was trying to avoid humiliation and harm. The anger people later saw in the ring was not theatrical. It was learned behavior shaped by fear. Tyson has often described feeling abandoned and invisible, unsure of where he belonged. In that environment, violence became a shield. It gave him control in a world that felt chaotic. He did not grow into a fighter because he loved the sport. He became one because he believed it was the only way to survive. The mentor who changed everything. Tyson's life shifted dramatically when he met Cus D'Amato, the legendary trainer who saw beyond the angry teenager. D'Amato recognized not just physical talent, but emotional vulnerability. He introduced Tyson to the peekaboo boxing style and, more importantly, to structure and belief. For the first time, Tyson had stability. D'Amato became a father figure, teaching him discipline, philosophy, and self-worth. He spoke to Tyson about fear, not as something to escape, but something to master. Under his guidance, the reckless street fighter transformed into a focused prodigy. Tyson felt protected and understood. That sense of belonging fueled his rise through the amateur ranks and into professional stardom. But just as Tyson began to feel secure, tragedy struck. In 1985, D'Amato died. The loss devastated Tyson. He did not just lose a coach, he lost the one person who truly anchored him emotionally. The foundation of his newfound confidence suddenly felt fragile again. The youngest heavyweight champion. In 1986, at only 20 years old, Tyson captured the WBC heavyweight title by defeating Trevor Berbick, becoming the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history. The world saw a phenomenon. His explosive combinations and relentless pressure overwhelmed seasoned fighters. Promoters celebrated him as the future of the sport. The media portrayed him as invincible. Yet behind the spectacle was a grieving young man navigating sudden fame without his mentor. D'Amato had prepared him for opponents in the ring, but not for the machinery of celebrity. Advisors, managers, and opportunists surrounded him. Decisions were made quickly, money flowed endlessly, and expectations grew heavier with every knockout. Tyson was no longer just an athlete, he was a brand. While fans admired his dominance, few recognized how alone he felt. The applause grew louder, but the guidance he needed most was gone. Success magnified his unresolved pain instead of healing it. A marriage in the spotlight. By 1988, Tyson's fame extended beyond boxing. His marriage to actress Robin Givens drew intense media attention. To the public, it looked like a glamorous union between sports royalty and Hollywood elegance. But behind closed doors, the relationship was turbulent. Tyson struggled with emotional regulation, insomnia, and lingering trauma. Givens later described feeling frightened and overwhelmed. Their conflicts became public during a widely viewed interview with Barbara Walters, where Givens referred to the marriage as torture. Tyson sat beside her, visibly wounded and silent. The image shocked viewers. For the first time, the fearsome champion appeared small and humiliated. Sympathy rapidly shifted to criticism. The narrative of the unstoppable warrior cracked. The marriage ended in divorce, but the emotional fallout lingered. Tyson's inability to process pain privately meant every fracture in his life unfolded under a global spotlight. Conviction and collapse. In 1992, Tyson's life reached its darkest turning point when he was convicted of rape and sentenced to 6 years in prison. He maintained his innocence, but the verdict stood. The conviction shattered his public image. Sponsors vanished, endorsements dissolved, and the media scrutiny intensified. The man once feared for his power now faced confinement and isolation. For many observers, his downfall seemed swift and dramatic. Yet in hindsight, it reflected years of instability and poor decision-making. Prison forced Tyson into stillness, a space he had long avoided. Stripped of fame and wealth, he confronted himself without the roar of a crowd. He converted to Islam during this period and began reflecting on his life's trajectory. Whether one views his conviction through a lens of justice or controversy, its impact was undeniable. Tyson's myth of invincibility was permanently dismantled. He was no longer just a fallen champion. He was a deeply polarizing figure. The bite heard around the world. After his release in 1995, Tyson returned to boxing seeking redemption, but the volatility remained. In 1997, during a highly anticipated rematch with Evander Holyfield, frustration overtook him. Holyfield's tactics and physicality unsettled Tyson from the opening rounds. As pressure mounted, Tyson snapped, biting Holyfield's ear in one of the most shocking moments in sports history. When he bit again, disbelief turned to outrage. He was disqualified, fined millions, and suspended. The incident eclipsed his achievements. For many, it defined him more than his championships ever did. Yet beneath the spectacle was a man unraveling emotionally in real time. The bite was not merely an act of aggression, it was a public breakdown. It symbolized years of unaddressed anger and instability boiling over. Tyson's legacy became permanently intertwined with that night, complicating how the world would remember his greatness. Redemption and reflection. In the years that followed, Tyson's life took unexpected turns. Financial troubles, exhibition matches, film appearances, and candid interviews gradually reshaped public perception. He began speaking openly about his trauma, addictions, and regrets. The ferocious persona softened into vulnerability. Appearances in projects like The Hangover introduced him to a new generation who saw humor rather than menace. More importantly, Tyson himself began acknowledging the wounds he had long ignored. Therapy, spirituality, and introspection helped him articulate the fear that once drove him. While he can never erase his controversies, he has demonstrated growth and self-awareness. The frightened child from Brownsville, the youngest heavyweight champion, the disgraced inmate, and the aging philosopher now coexist in one complex human being. His journey is not a simple tale of rise and fall, but of survival, damage, accountability, and the ongoing search for peace. Conclusion: beyond the knockouts. Mike Tyson's story resists simplicity. He was a prodigy shaped by poverty, a champion forged by discipline, and a celebrity undone by unhealed trauma. His knockouts were real, but so were his fears. The world often prefers heroes or villains, yet Tyson has been both and neither. His life illustrates how unresolved childhood wounds can echo through fame and fortune. Belts, money, and applause cannot substitute for emotional healing. Today, Tyson speaks openly about vulnerability in ways that the young champion never could. That evolution may be his most meaningful victory. The myth of invincibility has faded, replaced by something more human, a man still learning, still reflecting, and still searching for balance. In understanding his story fully, we move beyond the spectacle of violence and see the fragile humanity that was there all along.